Olivia Carter had always prided herself on her sharp instincts and problem solving skills, traits that made her one of the most promising software engineers in Chicago. At just 30, she had already secured multi-million-dollar contracts for her firm, earning respect in a highly competitive industry. But lately, something felt off. Over the past year, she had been plagued by strange, unexplained illnesses, intense nausea, dizziness, and migraines that seemed to strike only after meals shared with her husband Ethan and his sister Sophia. It had started subtly, a mild allergic reaction here, a stomach bug there, but the pattern was becoming impossible to ignore. Ethan had always been supportive, or so she had believed, but in recent months his behavior had changed. He was spending more time at Sophia's tech firm, claiming to be helping with a new project. He grew defensive when Olivia brought up her suspicions, dismissing them with a forced laugh. "You're overthinking it, Liv. Maybe you just have a sensitive stomach." But the nagging doubt wouldn't go away. The final straw came one Saturday morning when Ethan handed her a steaming cup of coffee, his eyes watching her too closely. "I made this just for you," he said, his tone unnervingly cheerful. Olivia hesitated, bringing the cup to her lips. The scent was off metallic, almost medicinal. A cold chill ran down her spine. Was she imagining things? Or was her husband trying to poison her? The thought was unthinkable, but after months of unexplained illnesses, Olivia knew she couldn't ignore the signs any longer. She needed proof. And she needed it fast. Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The moment she set the coffee cup down, pretending to take a sip, she felt Ethan's eyes linger on her, as if he was waiting for something to happen. The metallic scent still clung to her senses, making her stomach churn. Had it always been this obvious? Or had she simply ignored the signs for too long? The more she thought about it, the more memories surfaced. Small, seemingly insignificant incidents that now carried a far more sinister weight. She recalled the tech conference 2 months ago, where she had been scheduled to present a crucial project update. The night before, they had dinner at Sophia's penthouse. Olivia had barely made it through the night before collapsing with violent food poisoning. Ethan had been the one to insist on ordering for her. "You work too hard, Liv. Just relax and let me take care of things," he had said with a reassuring smile. The same reassuring smile he gave her now. The next morning, she had been too weak to even get out of bed, and Sophia had stepped in as her replacement at the conference, securing a deal Olivia had spent months negotiating. And then there was the tea incident. One afternoon at Sophia's office, her sister-in-law had handed her a cup of herbal tea, claiming it would help with stress. Within hours, Olivia had been doubled over in pain, rushed to urgent care, where doctors chalked it up to a food reaction. Sophia, of course, had been completely apologetic. "I made it the same way I always do," she had said, looking genuinely puzzled. Olivia had wanted to believe her, but now, sitting across from her husband at the breakfast table, she wasn't so sure anymore. Determined to get to the bottom of things, Olivia started keeping a private log of her symptoms, dates, and meals. Each episode seemed to trace back to a meal or drink she had shared with either Ethan or Sophia. Coincidence? Maybe once, maybe even twice, but not over and over again. The pattern was undeniable. The final confirmation came when Olivia accidentally glimpsed Ethan's phone screen one evening. He had been messaging Sophia, the preview of a text, catching her attention. "Not strong enough last time, we need to up the dose." Her blood ran cold. Ethan had never kept his phone locked before, but now he had changed his password. Something he had never done in their 5 years together. Olivia waited until he was in the shower, then retrieved his laptop. She knew Ethan wasn't careful about syncing his messages. With shaking hands, she scrolled through his chat history. The texts confirmed everything: discussions of dosages, references to Olivia's inconvenient resilience, and most damning of all, plans to make sure she was out of commission before the next big client presentation. Olivia swallowed hard, her mind racing. They were poisoning her, and if she wasn't careful, next time they might succeed. She needed a plan, and she needed it fast. Olivia arrived at Sophia's luxurious penthouse in downtown Chicago for the monthly family brunch, her heart pounding beneath her composed exterior. She had spent the last 2 nights replaying the messages she had found, planning her next move. She needed proof, undeniable evidence that would expose Ethan and Sophia's scheme. And today, she was going to get it. The dining table was set with pristine white plates, delicate silverware, and an expensive floral centerpiece. Sophia greeted Olivia with her usual polished smile, her eyes gleaming with an unsettling sense of control. "You're just in time," she said, motioning toward the steaming cups of coffee at each seat. "I made this especially for you." Olivia's stomach twisted as she took her seat across from Ethan, who looked unusually eager. "You have to try it," he urged, watching her far too intently. "I've been practicing different brewing methods just for you." "Just for you?" The phrase sent a chill down Olivia's spine. She reached for the cup, careful to keep her expression neutral. The same metallic scent she had noticed in Ethan's coffee at home wafted up to her nose. Her fingers tightened around the handle as she glanced at Sophia, who was stirring her own cup absent-mindedly but not drinking it. Olivia's mind raced. She wasn't going to drink it, because she knew this was it. With a polite smile, Olivia pretended to check her phone. "Oh, I just got a work notification. Let me reply really quick." She angled her body slightly, her fingers moving swiftly as she switched her coffee cup with Sophia's in the distraction. It took only a second, but when she looked up, neither Ethan nor Sophia seemed to have noticed. Sophia leaned back in her chair, her posture relaxed. "Well, here's to family," she said, lifting the cup to her lips. Ethan reached for his own, glancing expectantly at Olivia. She mimicked the motion, bringing the cup close, but not drinking. And then she waited. At first, nothing happened. Olivia's pulse pounded in her ears as Sophia took another sip, her expression indifferent. Maybe she had been wrong. Maybe this was all. Sophia's hand trembled slightly as she set her cup down. A flicker of something unreadable passed over her face. Then, just as Olivia was about to doubt herself, Sophia's fingers stiffened, and a barely audible gasp slipped from her lips. "Ethan?" she muttered. Her voice was tight, her skin paling. Olivia's breath caught. Ethan's brows furrowed. "What's wrong?" Sophia's eyes darted toward Olivia before she let out a sharp inhale, pressing a hand to her stomach. The realization hit her all at once. "I don't—" She pushed back from the table, trying to stand, but her knees buckled. "Something's wrong." Ethan's face transformed from confusion to panic. His chair screeched as he jumped up, knocking it over. "Sophia, what's happening?" Sophia gripped the edge of the table, her knuckles white. She looked from the coffee cup to Olivia, horror dawning on her face. She knew. "You switched them," she gasped, her voice raw with shock. Ethan's head snapped toward Olivia, his face draining of color. "What did you do?" Olivia stood slowly, keeping her voice steady. "Nothing, Ethan." She held up her phone, revealing the active recording. "I just wanted to see what would happen if someone else drank my coffee for once." Sophia let out a shuddering breath, her body trembling as she turned toward Ethan. Pure rage burned in her gaze. "You told me." Her voice cracked, her legs giving out. Ethan lunged to catch her just as she collapsed to the floor. Olivia took a step back, her phone still recording as Ethan cradled his sister, his face contorted in terror. "What did you put in it, Ethan?" she asked, her voice eerily calm. The sirens of an approaching ambulance pierced the air, and as Ethan's mouth opened, his entire world began to unravel. Sophia's body convulsed as she clutched Ethan's arm, her breathing ragged. Olivia stood motionless, her phone still recording, capturing every frantic second. The mask had finally slipped, and the panic in Ethan's eyes confirmed everything she had suspected. This wasn't an accident, nor was it some misunderstanding. It was deliberate. And now they both knew, she knew. Ethan's hands trembled as he supported Sophia, his fingers tightening around her shoulders. "You're okay," he whispered, but his voice lacked conviction. He shot a glance at Olivia, his jaw tightening. "Call an ambulance. Now." "I already did," Olivia replied coolly. Sophia's entire body shuddered. She gasped, her fingers clawing at Ethan's shirt, trying to keep herself upright. "You idiot!" She spat through gritted teeth, her voice weak but laced with venom. "You said?" "Just enough to keep her out of work. Not this." Ethan's face contorted in horror. "That wasn't—" He cut himself off, realizing too late that his words only made things worse. Olivia took a step closer, her voice unwavering. "So you admit it," she said. "You've been poisoning me, and now that the plan backfired, you're turning on each other." Sophia groaned in pain, her head tilting back as she tried to focus on Ethan. "You promised it wouldn't be traced," she whispered, her lips barely moving. "You swore it was just a mild dose." "Just enough to make her look unreliable at work." Olivia's stomach clenched. The confirmation, though expected, sent a new wave of anger coursing through her veins. It hadn't just been about hurting her physically. They had been systematically destroying her career. Ethan's eyes darted to Olivia, his panic escalating. "Liv, listen to me." "You're blowing this out of proportion." He forced out a shaky laugh, though his entire body was rigid. "We just wanted you to take a break. You've been working so hard, and you needed to slow down." "By poisoning me?" Olivia cut in sharply. She held up her phone, the screen still glowing red with the recording icon. "By sending me to the hospital over and over again?" Sophia let out a low, broken laugh, even as her body continued to tremble. "Don't you get it, Olivia?" she murmured. "You were taking everything, every big project, every major deal. You weren't supposed to be this good." Her face twisted in pain, but the bitterness in her eyes was unmistakable. "I built this career before you even stepped into the industry, and then you came in and ruined everything." Ethan flinched at her words, but Olivia wasn't done. "And Ethan, what's your excuse?" she demanded, taking another step forward. He opened his mouth, but before he could respond, Sophia coughed violently, her body convulsing again. "James," she gasped, gripping his wrist weakly. Tell her the truth before she sends us both to prison." His face went ghostly pale, his lips parted as if he wanted to deny it, but Olivia already knew he had nothing left to say. Outside, the sound of sirens grew louder. Olivia turned toward the door just as the paramedics arrived, pushing past her to attend to Sophia. As they worked quickly to stabilize her, Olivia's gaze locked onto Ethan's. "This is over," she said, her voice final. Ethan looked at her as if trying to find a way out, but there was none. His world, his carefully constructed plan, had just collapsed, and there was no escaping what came next. The emergency room at Chicago General was a blur of activity as doctors worked to stabilize Sophia. Olivia stood just outside the doorway, her phone still clutched in her hand, the recording of Sophia's confession playing on a loop in her mind. The moment Sophia had accused Ethan of escalating the poisoning, of making it stronger than planned, was all the proof Olivia needed. But she wasn't going to stop there. She needed to make sure this wouldn't be swept under the rug. Detective Reynolds arrived within the hour, his sharp eyes scanning the hospital room before settling on Olivia. "Mrs. Carter," he greeted, his voice professional yet firm. "We need to talk." She nodded and led him into a quiet waiting area. Taking a steady breath, she pulled out her phone and played the recording. As Sophia's weak voice confessed to poisoning her, as Ethan's panic-filled stammer tried to cover their tracks, Reynolds' expression darkened. "This isn't just attempted poisoning," the detective murmured. "This is premeditated, and the fact that they kept increasing the dosage—" He shook his head. "We'll need to pull their financials, their communications, everything." Olivia had been preparing for this moment. She opened her email and forwarded the text messages she had uncovered from Ethan's laptop. Messages discussing dosages, schedules, and even contingency plans if she became suspicious. There was even a note about ensuring she missed the next tech presentation, just like the one she had been too sick to attend before. "I also started keeping a log," she admitted, handing him a folder. Inside were printed records of her hospital visits, the dates of her symptoms, and the meals she had shared with Ethan and Sophia. Detective Reynolds flipped through the pages, nodding grimly. "This is solid," he said, "but we need physical evidence." Just then, Dr. Patel approached, holding a medical report in her hand. "We ran toxicology on Sophia's blood work," she said, glancing between Olivia and the detective. "The substance we found? It's not something that accidentally ends up in food. It's a pharmaceutical compound used in clinical trials, tightly regulated. There's no way they should have had access to it." Olivia's heart pounded. "Can you compare it to my previous hospital visits?" Dr. Patel's brows furrowed. "We still have some of your old samples on file. I'll run across analysis." Reynolds turned to one of his officers. "Get a search warrant for their homes and offices. If they've been stockpiling this, we'll find it." As the detective spoke to his team, Olivia stepped to the side, exhaling shakily. This was it. The proof she needed to bring them down. She had spent months questioning her own sanity, wondering if she was overreacting. But she had trusted her instincts, and now Ethan and Sophia were out of time. The trial began 3 months later, drawing the attention of Chicago's corporate and legal circles. People were stunned. A respected tech executive and her brother, a software engineer, standing trial for attempted murder and corporate sabotage. But as the prosecution laid out its case, the truth became undeniable. Olivia sat in the front row, listening as the prosecutors meticulously presented the evidence. The recording of Sophia's confession played first, her weak voice admitting to the plan, blaming Ethan for escalating it. Then came the text messages, which outlined their methodical approach to poisoning Olivia, ensuring she would be incapacitated before key presentations. Hospital records were displayed, each instance of Olivia's mysterious illness coinciding with a visit to Ethan and Sophia's home. But the most damning testimony came from Dr. Patel. She took the stand and confirmed that the toxin found in Sophia's system matched traces found in Olivia's past hospitalizations. This wasn't food poisoning, Dr. Patel told the jury. This was a deliberate, systematic exposure to a toxic compound over several months. Sophia, once so composed and elegant, now looked frail and defeated in the defendant's chair. Ethan, who had spent years presenting himself as the perfect husband, couldn't even meet Olivia's gaze. When the prosecution rested, the defense scrambled. Ethan's lawyer argued that he had been misled by Sophia, claiming he had no knowledge of the extent of the poisoning. Sophia, in turn, tried to shift the blame entirely to Ethan, insisting she never intended serious harm. But the jury wasn't convinced. After only 4 hours of deliberation, the verdict was announced. Guilty. Ethan and Sophia were convicted on multiple counts, including attempted murder, conspiracy, and corporate fraud. The judge, stern and unforgiving, handed down the maximum sentence, citing their premeditation and lack of remorse. As they were led away in handcuffs, Olivia felt no joy, only relief. The nightmare was over. They had tried to destroy her, but in the end, they had destroyed themselves. 1 year later, Olivia stood on stage at Chicago's annual Tech Innovators Conference, her name displayed proudly on the event banner. She was the keynote speaker, the same opportunity Ethan and Sophia had tried to steal from her. As she looked out at the crowd, filled with young professionals eager to learn from her success, she smiled. They had failed. They had failed. The biggest threats to success, Olivia began, don't always come from competitors. Sometimes they come from the people closest to us, the ones who should be supporting us. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the audience. But what matters is how we overcome those challenges. We trust our instincts, we gather the facts, and we refuse to let fear stop us. As the conference ended, Olivia received an email confirming a multi-million-dollar contract renewal with a top client, the same client Sophia had tried to sabotage her for. She closed her laptop, exhaling. There was no need for revenge. Her success was enough. The morning headlines covered Ethan and Sophia's sentencing, but Olivia didn't bother reading them. They were the past. Her future was waiting, and she was ready for it. The story of Olivia Carter teaches a powerful lesson about trusting your instincts and standing up for yourself, even when those closest to you betray you. It highlights the dangers of blind trust and the importance of recognizing red flags, no matter how subtle. Olivia's resilience proves that success isn't just about talent, but also about perseverance, awareness, and integrity. Despite attempts to sabotage her, she gathered evidence, took control, and fought back. In the end, the best revenge wasn't retaliation, it was thriving despite adversity and proving that honesty and hard work always prevail.